And so what we're going to do today is we're going to briefly go through an overview of what financial awareness means. And then we'll focus in on budgeting, and we'll give an example of how to build your monthly budget. So financial awareness, right? Financial awareness or financial literacy is really broken down into four main pillars, right? It's four core concepts. And those are banking, budgeting, credit, and investments. Now, we're going to go into a little bit of each of these four, but really today we're going to focus on budgeting. Okay, so start off, we're going to look at banking. So banking is, a general definition of banking would be a place or the act of storing money within a financial institution. So a bank, you put your money in there and you can access it through a debit card, or you can go and set up a checking account, so you send checks through your bank. When we set up a banking account, we typically have two major types of banking, and those are going to be checking, which is where you have money that's stored for a short amount of time. So that's money that you might need to spend within the same month that it goes into your account. And then you have a savings account. So a savings account is where you put money for long-term storage, or when you want to build interest. Now, I mentioned the term interest. Interest refers to an amount of money that you earn over time as a percentage of what you put in. So as an example, if you put $1,000 into a savings account, and your savings account has an interest rate of 1%, that means that at the end of the month, you will get 10% added on, or you'll get $10 added on top of your $1,000. So you will have a total of $1,010. Now I see we just had someone join in. If you want to go back and see the beginning of the presentation, we haven't gotten too far, but you can go back and watch the video as well. Or we can come back if there's time after during the questions.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is credit. So credit refers to the act of borrowing money with interest meant to be paid back over time. So just like interest with banking when you're saving money, there's interest when you borrow money. Okay, there's a couple of different types of personal credit, but the most common are credit cards. So credit cards are typically, you can borrow a small amount of money with a high interest rate, which means that you quickly rack up debt if you don't pay those cards off. Personal loans allow you to take out a large amount of money with a large interest rate. So those are really bad ideas most of the time. Personal loans, one of the most common type is a payday loan, and that's a loan you take out. For example, if you have a bill due the day before your payday, so you pay your bill, then the next day you pay it off. Those are generally a bad idea though. And then finally we have long-term loans. So long-term loans such as student loans, car loans, home mortgage loans, those are typically large sums of money that are borrowed for meant to be paid off over years, and they have low interest rates, so you don't rack up much debt. You're mostly going to be paying on that initial amount and then just a little bit of interest on top. Now, when we talk about interest, you can see the rates before you take out any kind of credit, and those are typically given an APR or annual percentage rate. So that tells you what percentage of interest is going to be added on at the end of each year. Sometimes you also see MPR or a monthly percentage rate, and that tells you how much interest is added on after each month. Okay, next we want to look at investments. So investments are when you give your money to a company or an organization in order for them to grow and hopefully for them to make money and then to pass on those gains to you, the investor. So there's two really common types of investments, and the first one, which most of you have probably heard of before, is the stock. So a stock is where you buy partial ownership of a company, and what that means is if the company's value goes up, so if the total sum of all of whether they're making money, like making a profit that year, or they have assets that are worth a lot of money. If the company value goes up, your stock price goes up, and you can sell your stocks to make money. Whereas if the company value goes down, then your stock value goes down, and if you sell it, you would lose money. Bonds, on the other hand, are an investment type where you lend money to a company or organization, and they use it for a large-scale project. Then at the end of that time period, whether it's, and they're typically, bonds are typically longer time periods, like 5 to 10 years. At the end, they will pay back that bonds. And if the company can't pay that back the bond, they pass their bonds on to other organizations or lenders, and they will pay you back. So bonds are generally safer than stocks, but you generally don't get as much money out of them. Okay. Now budgeting. Now this is the big one. Okay. So budgeting is the act of keeping your track of your personal income, expenses, and how you can turn that remaining income into savings. That way you can use it for big future costs. So income is simply the amount of money that you pull in over a period of time. Typically, when we're talking about income, we talk about monthly income. Expenses is the amount of money you spend over a given period of time, so a month, and that can be anything from bills to entertainment to shopping. Okay, and then next is savings. So savings is the amount of money you put aside at the end of the month that you want to put into like a savings account so that you can build interest. Or maybe you don't have a savings account, you just keep money in a safe. That way you can save it up for a rainy day or whenever there's an emergency. So why should we budget, right? Well, the first big thing really is it makes sure you have enough money for the necessities, right? Paying your bills, making sure you have food, those kind of things. It also lets you see in a clear and easy to follow form what you can and can't live without. I mean, do you really need a cable subscription and a Netflix subscription and a Hulu subscription? Could you live without one or the other? And then without a detailed budget, planning for long-term goals becomes difficult. So a shorter-term goal, like maybe you save up for a couple months and you buy a big new TV. Or a mid-term goal, like you save up for a year or two and you can go on vacation. Or maybe a longer-term goal and you save up for 5-10 years and then you can buy a house. Or put enough money down to take out a mortgage on a house. Now, we mentioned expenses. Let's look at a couple of different types of expenses. We can split expenses into two categories. Those that are essential, which you need in order to live, and those that are non-essential, which you can live without. Expenses can also be fixed or variable. So a fixed expense is typically the same every month, and these would be things like, generally speaking, your rent and your car payment. Now those might fluctuate a little, but they'll be typically around the same amount. Now variable expenses change from month to month. These are things like groceries, your phone bill, your gas. You might drive a different amount each month. Another big one is an electricity bill. Generally your electricity costs a lot more in the summer when you have your AC going versus during the winter or the fall when it's not going, and maybe you don't even have a heater going here down in South Texas. And then finally, we have also unexpected expenses. These are also variable. So these are things like car maintenance or storm damage or medical bills. Okay. Now, that's everything I wanted to talk about just to give you an overview. But now what we're going to do is we're going to go into an example. We're going to look at an Excel spreadsheet I've already prepared here for us. And it's going to be a sample budget. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and start off by just starting from scratch, and the reason I'm doing this is if you're following along at home and maybe you don't have Microsoft Excel, you can pull out a blank sheet of paper and you can follow along with us. So the way you would do this, the way I typically like to do my budgets, is first I'll look at the source of income. So what is the source, or I say income or expenses. So the source, like my paycheck or my rent bill or my electricity bill, that would be what the source is. Then I like to keep track of dates, because keeping track of dates lets me get a finer look at, well, this is how much money I had in the beginning of the month, and this is how much I had in the middle of the month and at the end, right? So keeping track of dates can be important for that reason. And then we have the amount. So the amount is just going to be whether, if it's like your paycheck, how much you got in, or if it's your bill, how much it cost, okay? Then what I also like to do is I like to split it up into categories, right? So first I want to look at prior month. So the prior month, that's going to say, I'm going to look at my checking and savings for my prior month. Then I'm going to look at my income. And so with my income, I would look at maybe my paycheck, and maybe we have like a stipend, or maybe I've got a grant or something coming in. So that would be, we'll say, additional sources, right? And so let's say for a given month, let's say I start off with $1,000 in the bank, and, well, actually, let's flip that. Let's say $500 in the bank and $1,000 in savings. And the reason I use these numbers is they're nice round numbers, easy to work with. Okay? Now under income, my paycheck, let's say my paycheck is $800. Okay? And let's say I get $100 from additional sources. Okay? And then now that's my income. Let's look at my expenses. So let's say that I have my rent. My rent comes out and it is, let's say, $700. Okay? And then let's say internet bill. Let's say my internet is $80. Okay? So then what I'll do is I'll take the subtotal of each. So I'll take my total subtotal of my income. So let's go ahead and actually move this down one. My subtotal for income is going to be just 800 plus 100, and I'm just going to add those up. That's 900. And then let's say my subtotal for expenses is going to be that 700 plus 800 or 80, so that's going to be 780. And then finally, I can come down and look at the amount of money I've lost compared to the money I brought in. So I brought in 900 and I lost 780. So that leaves me with 120. And then I can add that to the 500 I had before, and that's going to give me 620. So I have 620 in checking, and that's before we do any savings or anything. So that just gives you a basic idea of how we can create our own budget. But let's go ahead and look at a more in-depth example. So here I've already gone in and formatted this a little easier to follow. So here you can see, again, same idea, source, date, and amount. I've gone ahead and filled out. For the beginning of the month, I usually just say the first day of the month. And again, we'll say, 500 in my checkings and 1,000 in my savings. So I've actually already set this up so it will automatically calculate some things for me here. And let's say my paycheck, again, that was $700 as a paycheck. And let's say our additional income, we'll say that will be, and we'll say that came in on the 3rd. Okay, just as an example. And that was $100. So here's automatically added them up for me. The subtotal is 800. And let's say the rent, what did I say was 700 before? I think I said actually the paycheck was 800. I just want to make sure these are going to be consistent here. And let's say internet was $80. And I'm just for the example, I'm not going to worry about filling out the date. And here it's filled out the subtotal here for the expenses. So I've spent $780 and I've brought in $900. And what here is I take this net income is my income minus the amount I spent. So that's this 900 minus 780. And then checking before savings, what this does is it takes that 500 that was already in the bank and adds that 120 to it. We get 620. Now finally, we want to put some money towards savings. So let's say I want to put $200 towards savings. Okay. So what that does is it takes the 620 here, subtracts 200, and that tells me the new amount here in my checking account. And then that adds 200 to the previous value of 1,000 for my savings. So this is kind of already formatted, and it's nice that I can do all this in Excel. But as I showed you already, we can do everything on a piece of paper if you don't have Excel. Now, this is the majority of what I wanted to talk about, but I want to go ahead and show you a couple of others that I've got set up for you here. So these are 2 other examples of ways we can do our budget. So this one is one that Microsoft already has set up for you. If you do have Excel, this one's really nifty. You just go into File, and whenever you go to choose your type of file, you can choose blank workbook, but one of the options is personal monthly budget. So if we click on that one, this one's already formatted for you. So all you have to do is come in here and change the values. Now, one thing I like about this one is it tells you the projected cost and the actual cost, and then it allows you to determine the difference. So what does that mean? Well, let's say you expected your phone bill to be $54, but in actuality you had to make a bunch of international calls, so your phone bill wound up being more expensive, and you wound up spending $46 more than expected. On the other hand, you accounted for car maintenance. So you figured, on average you have to spend $23 a month on car maintenance. But this month you didn't have to do car maintenance, so you didn't spend any money, and you got to pocket that $23. So that's one really nice thing about doing your budget like this, is you can see projected versus actual cost and then look at the difference. And that's really good for seeing if you're lowballing things or if you're highballing things. If you're saying, oh, I don't spend that much money on entertainment, but then when you actually go and budget, you'll see, oh, wow, I spent a lot of money on the different like Netflix and Hulu subscriptions. Okay. And then finally, here we have a yearly budget. So the yearly budget, I've just taken that same monthly budget and I've expanded it out over a year. So here, this is the same thing we had before. Nothing different. I've just filled in more values for my costs. So rent, TV, electricity, car payments, your cell phone bill, Netflix, car insurance. So I've just gone in and filled in a couple of more expenses, and we've got some different numbers here. And then what I've done here is I've got each month, so we can keep track of how much money you're spending or bringing in each month. Oh, I got chat here. Oh yeah, this one's kind of small. So this one, the reason I had it zoomed out was just so you can kind of get the perspective. But yeah, so we zoom in here. It's just like with the previous one I showed you, the monthly budget. We've just expanded it out here to include each of the months, January, February, all the way up through December. And then same idea, we can just add each month's previous amount. So the previous amount in savings was 300, and we add 200 to it, so that's 500. 500, we add 200 again, that's 700. Add 200 again, that's 900. So this allows us to keep track of how our savings grow over time, and that's why that can sometimes be useful, is to do a yearly budget. But most of the time, you're going to do a monthly budget. And with all of that out of the way, that's everything I wanted to talk about for the day. I want to go ahead and open it up for questions. I know I spoke really fast. There's a lot of material to go through. So if anyone has any questions, go ahead and speak up.
I have a quick question, and it's probably just an overview. You talked about stocks. Is there a rule of thumb as to, I guess, income coming in and is going out that we should think about when it comes to which direction of investment we're going to?
Right. So if you're interested in investment, right, most of the time when you do an investment, you go through a financial counselor. So you'll go through a company like H&R Block, and somebody there will help you put together what's known as a stock portfolio. Your portfolio includes a variety of different things. So you'll have stocks and some things, bonds and other things. You'll have other kinds of investments that I didn't mention here. Stocks and bonds are just the simplest two types, but there's a wide variety of different types of investments. But typically, The reason you do it in that way, right, is they call that diversifying your portfolio, and what that means is if one thing doesn't do well, another thing is likely to do well. So you want to kind of balance it out, and you can take some risks. So a couple of years ago, it might have been considered very risky to put stock into Tesla, but today Tesla is the most valuable car company in the world. Whereas it's tripled in value its stock has over the last year. So if you had invested in Tesla, you could be very rich right now. So stocks are volatile like that. You can make a lot of money with them, and generally it's better not to invest in volatile stocks, though you can make good and good income on them. It's better instead to look at bonds, which are safer, and you want to use bonds to back your stock investments. So maybe
So
bonds
it's
aren't
best to
that
go to
risky. Yeah, go
to a
ahead.
professional instead of I see all these ads about, well, you can do this on this app or you can do that on that app. And
Right.
so a professional is the best direction to go to.
Yes, yes, and generally, at least when you're starting off, that's what you would want to do. You can
Okay.
do some investments on your own, but you wouldn't want to put a lot of money into personal investments until you've really got good experience. That way, you can kind of see the way the market moves. Bonds are pretty safe, but stocks you really shouldn't do unless you just have a little bit of money and you're saying, well, this stock's only $5 right now. I want to see what happens to it. And there are some stocks that are pretty cheap that you can invest in. Some of them are pretty expensive, like Tesla, which is nearly $1,000 per stock. But some of them are pretty cheap. So if you just want to try your hand at it, you can.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I also know you missed a little bit here at the beginning. We just talked about banking. I'll go ahead and pull that up here so you can see that. We just talked about banking is storing your money. There's two different types of banking typically. It's checking and savings. Checking is just storing your money, mostly for whenever you want to use it in the same month that you put it in. And savings when you want to store it for a long period of time. And you can build interest on savings accounts. So there might be a 1% interest rate as an example. And let's say you have $1,000 in savings at the end of the month, that 1% adds $10 to your account. So you get $10 just for having your money in that account. And that's all you missed there. All right. Did anyone else have any questions? All right. Oh, we've got a chat here. Oh, okay. Great. Okay. All right. Well, if nobody else has got questions, I'm gonna go ahead and let you know about next week's workshop as well. So next week we're gonna be doing a work. I'm sorry. Somebody trying to speak. Okay. Next week workshop we're doing a workshop on Microsoft. Oh, we got chat here. Oh, thank you, Dion. Next week we're doing a workshop on Microsoft Word. So we're going to be going over how to format an essay and how to do your citations. So that's going to be getting your essay in the correct format, font size 12 times New Roman, double spaced. We'll primarily focus on MLA citations, and that's how you quote and provide sources whenever you quote somebody.